guys, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel. As many of you know, I am a woman in long-term recovery. I am also a CARC, a CRPA, a rape crisis counselor, and a Narcan trainer. If you look at my description box down below, you will find the link to a video that describes all of that goodness I just explained. Also, you will find all my social media and my wish list. As you know, I have multiple Amazon wish lists. I have a harm reduction one that is available by request only because occasionally we get some haters and we're not going to allow that to happen because this is a safe space and we don't let anybody do that type of stuff. My go bags is my regular Amazon wish list. That is the stuff that I use to help people in my local community who are struggling, in need, just home from incarceration, rehab. You know the drill. You guys know what's up. And then I have my Mother's Day wish list that I have available for you guys, for the people that I am just working with and some of the ladies that are in the shelter for this Mother's Day. So I feel like I'm kind of rushing through this one. As you guys can see, I have a guest here with me today, and this is my friend Alex. Alex has come to share his story, so I hope everybody listens with an open heart and open ears. And if you have any questions, you know you can always get at me, and I will actually find out the answers for you. So, Alex, what's up?
Hello, how's it going?
Welcome.
I'm Alex. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I am transgender and part of the activist community in that, and for those seeking recovery services, I'm a CRPA, rape counselor as well, and domestic violence educator, safe sex, all of that fun stuff in a really rural town. Yes,
we live in super rural, rural. As you guys know, you've seen some pictures. So Alex and I met probably about 2 years ago, maybe now. We actually took our Recovery Coach Academy to get on the pathway to become CRPAs together. That's how we met. And we kind of just hit it off and started bullshitting right away. And we've remained in contact this entire time, even though we've both changed agencies and kind of took our careers in different paths, but still kind of doing the same thing. And I've been after Alex to come meet all you guys for a while, and he's finally accepted, and here we are. So I'm kind of super excited about this one. This is Alex's first time doing anything like this, and I know how fucking scary it is. So I have so much compassion for him right now. It's so awkward. So for me, the first time I ever did a YouTube video, it was by myself. So I didn't even have anyone to banter back and forth with. It was so weird.
I'm new to the social media. I'm not on Jen's level yet, but we do cross a lot of paths with working with the rural community and kind of coming up with ideas. So Jen's been my go-to for all things rural and finding sources and materials. I specifically like to work with those on the LGBT side because, as you know, we do exist here.
Yes, I love it though, actually. You know, I didn't realize how large of a community there was until you and I really started talking. So you have taught me so much. And when I don't know, I always screw up initials and I always say the wrong thing because I just don't know. And I'm always like, Alex, what is this? What is this? I don't know. And I'm like, please be mindful if I say this wrong. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm trying. I'm learning. So yeah. And of course, Lena is in here sniffing all of his stuff as always. So if you hear the cat, sorry. So, where do you want to start? Do you want to talk a little bit about you or what you do, or?
I can say I come from a place where, my heart lies in the rural area. Back here, a lot of people, say, why do you live here? Especially if you're on the LGBT spectrum, non-conforming, all of that fun stuff, non-binary, and in a rural area it can be super tough. So I chose to remain and educate, and
thank God.
I've come a long way because, as Jen says a lot about, finding recovery resources in this area is super hard, as we know.
It's next to non-existent sometimes, I feel like. Hopefully that's going to change shortly.
Absolutely. But when we are looking at how to accommodate those who are LGBT, it's really important. So I like to let people know that if you are seeking those services and you're nervous, and if you're trans, if you're in transition, meaning you just began that process, it's really important to make sure that you're safe during.
So what does that process look like? Because in all honesty, I mean, I've had a little bit exposure very personally, as you know, but other than that, I really don't even know. That's why as soon as that situation came up within my own personal family, right away I was like, I got a guy, we're going to call him. So
a lot of people, you wouldn't have to know about it unless it hits home, right?
Right.
So And clearly my experience here, there was nothing. You know, you couldn't even go to the library and be like, I feel this way, what is this? So it's common to not have that. Luckily, generations now have the language and know about it.
Right.
But, you know, when someone feels not related to or directly linked to their assigned birth sex, you know, that's that part where you're navigating it and you're trying to figure out what is comfortable for you. So it is, a lot of people say, you know, I didn't feel one with my body or my gender. And as we know, PSA, if you don't know, gender and sex are different, separate, wildly. Gender is here, and sex is clearly elsewhere.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, and it's...
That's the PSA. That's rule number one.
Right. So crazy that you say that, because as you know, someone in my family very personally is affected. And they always say that they still want to date both sexes because they're attracted to them, but they feel more one way than the other. And I totally, you know, I'm all for just be healthy, just, you know how I am. But I just, I always, like, that always was a question to me, thinking, because I don't know any better, I never had anyone to talk to about it, thinking like, well, if you still want to date the opposite sex or the same sex, you know what I mean, depending on which way you're going, isn't that just being gay? Or, you know, so I never knew these things until they personally affected me, and I'm super grateful that you are there. Let me tell you.
It's a common question, though. I mean, a lot of people ask. I didn't have the language when I was younger. I began actively trying to change things and find who I was when I was about 13.
Wow.
But I always was attracted to women, so it was very confusing, even for me, not being educated and having that language. So now we have that language, knowing that, you know, my sexuality, just like everybody's, is wildly different than our gender expression.
Right.
So gender expression is as simple as whatever you feel comfortable with. So now we're coming up with, there's a lot more than just male, female, butch, tomboy. You know, those are old
Stud.
school.
That's one that wasn't
Stud.
around growing up for me, and now it's a very commonly used one. And at first I was like, what's that mean? You know, and I'm like, Google, because I want to know.
And stud is like, you know, these words have a lot more meaning. They're tied to cultural things.
Yes.
They're tied to specific areas. But like ground level rural, right? I'm on a good day teaching someone in a rural area that's never heard of this. You know, the only time they've heard of the word trans is a transmission on a vehicle. So
It's so true.
So
Oh God.
breaking it down is basically, you know, how I wanted to express my gender, and also there's gender roles, right? And we live in a very old school area where, you know, those old school binaries are very real. So here I am coming through, you know, with my Mr. Rogers sweater and tattoos and, you know, hyper masculinity, but it's fluid. You can change it, but it doesn't change my sexual orientation. So throughout this process, but it's common to have that, you know.
Right. Okay, so let me ask you a question. So how long for you, because I know for everybody it's probably different, how long for you did it take for you to, well, obviously you started very young. You said at 13, you started realizing that this was not who you really truly were. And you started to try and educate yourself and learn how you could potentially become who you really are. How long did that process take for you? Like start to finish, if that's an okay question.
It is.
Okay.
For you.
Okay.
PSA to the world, don't ask a trans person, how long did it take for you to have the change?
Okay.
Only because...
See, I'm learning too, guys. Like, this is all new for me.
And this is a safe space, and Jen, you know, we've been here, and it's just... this is the advanced stuff. You know what I'm saying?
I kind of hope this is actually educational for everyone, so we all know better manners and better way to keep. No, I mean that better ways to treat the people that we care about that are going through these processes, so we can be more advocating for them and more supportive and more on their side, so they don't feel alone and they feel like they do have a support team.
Absolutely.
So
and this is that safe space where, and this is what I do for a living. So this is okay to have those Q&As, but when you ask that question, the golden rule of asking trans questions, especially in the community, especially if it's a friend or public area, is don't ask them something you wouldn't ask yourself. Because as you know, this is an extremely personal thing, and it's also hypersexualized. So a lot of the violence against transgender folks is sexual, and it can become violent because they want to know what our bodies look like. But when you ask me that question,
I see, that just blows my mind. Like, they look like how they should look. That's the answer in my eyes. Like, they look how they're supposed to, the same way mine looks how it's supposed to. And I feel like what's in your pants is not my business, vice versa. Like, in all sincerity, I just, like, for me, you're my friend, whether you were a male, a female, unsure, whatever the case may be. I look at people for people, not for what's in their pants. And I can't believe I'm even having to say this. Like,
but it's common. I mean, when you hit those are common questions, especially when you are navigating a world that's not educated. So, you know, for me, it didn't look like the common theme, and everybody's experience is different. Just because I'm telling you my experience, it does not mean that that is the next trans person that you may meet that discloses, you know, their identity to you. That's not their pathway. For me, again, rural area, there wasn't a lot of material, so I just began doing that, you know, binding, which was back in the day, you know, binding the chest, and very unsafe. And now there are extremely safer ways to do it. Don't wear your binder longer than 2 hours at a time.
Is it for breathing issues?
It can actually, so it's a type of material that is so tight, and if it's if the humidity's bad or in heat, you can actually faint, and it could break ribs. So, you know, you began exploring that. I began exploring that at a young age. I started doing that. I started presenting more male, but it took a long time, and I'm constantly in transition. So why I fell in love with the CRPA recovery world is because we meet people where they're at, and we also understand that recovery is constant.
Yes.
And so is transition. You know,
ever evolving.
So when people ask me, you know, when did you complete? When did you do that? I'm not, because just this week I learned that I had to wear suits, and I wanted to kind of feel out how I wanted to express myself without being a stereotype.
But I think that's amazing. Like, it's amazing that you constantly get to learn about yourself and find out about yourself. It's for me, I equate that with like recovery. Like, if you would have told me, and I just said this to someone the other day, like, if you would have told me 4 years ago when I was sitting in the Delaware County Jail that I would be who I am today and what I am and what I'm doing and what I'm about to embark on, I would have been like, who's your dealer? Like, because you're high and I need to get what you have because you're fucking batshit crazy. You know what I mean? And it's just amazing that, as you were saying, like, recovery and everything is always changing. It's always evolving. It's always becoming something different. And it's just amazing to me that we, as these people who have gone through so much shit, but have had the courage to stand up and change to become who we truly are supposed to be, we get these gifts, these jewels of constantly having these new things happen to us and these new experiences. And I'm so fucking grateful for it.
Same. And I'm here today because
I peer pressured you.
Well, yes, you peer pressured me, one. And also, you know, I asked myself why I do this. Clearly, this can be a dangerous role for me. And we have navigated that here in this area. But I could have, I don't want to say avoided, because I hate that when you think about our recovery pathways, right? But if I was able to...
But you could have hid from it.
If I had the outlets to explain, to talk, to have the professionals actually educated on this, and to be able to have that more, you know, wider scale acknowledgement of even what I was, I feel as though I wouldn't have been in those dark places for so long.
Right. You still would have went through hell, but it would have been a shorter journey.
Absolutely. So when I was, you know, challenging things, unfortunately, my family at that time was not accepting even the sexuality of dating women at that time. So I had been on my own since I was 14, navigating, and of course, you know how that goes around here. You kind of find yourself in a bad house, and all of a sudden it's, you know. So I started very young, but it took a long time to learn about myself and to pick myself up, and it started with my recovery. You know, yes, my transition may have been done, meaning how I changed my body to how I want it to be. my recovery piece was so strong in that because it taught me knowledge is power.
Yes.
We're constantly changing, and we also have to be mindful of how we represent ourselves. My recovery is my way. That's one of my favorites, right?
Absolutely.
It's my recovery. Well, so is my transition, and that's the key piece here. Not every trans person has that same pathway. Not everybody fully transitions medically,
Right.
So not every trans person is going to be on hormones. The process is incredibly difficult to get around and navigate in rural areas. So I help other trans people in the community find that.
From previous conversations that we've had, don't we only have like one decent doctor in the area?
We have one clinic in the area. It's about 30 minutes away. And for the area, it's sufficient. It's sufficient. If you go elsewhere, there are longer terms. The problem is having one place, right? Times all of these people coming forward. It's one doctor, unfortunately, can't spend that time. So when you medically transition, it is, and any human being, as we know, we have to take care of ourselves, especially if we spent a long time not.
Right.
And maintaining ourselves and our health. So for trans people, it is incredibly important.
Sure.
To maintain and your mental health, because as we know, this can be an extremely lonely thing, feeling isolated. So we are a minority, and sometimes we can't be seen like that. Unfortunately, that was taken away from me because I'm in a rural area. So I'm like, I'm the face of that here.
Oh, I understand that completely.
Yeah, so I'm the face of that here, and I've taken that role on. But safety is important, and also mental health. So just like our recovery and early recovery.
Yeah, for sure.
Taking care of that mental health space is so important, and it's important to open up these spaces to have that talk. If someone's questioning.
Right. And that's why I'm so grateful that you are so courageous and so open and honest, because, in all sincerity, I don't know what I would have done when I faced this within my own family. I don't know where I would have turned. I would have Googled something and called some people and made a bunch of people uncomfortable. And it's what I do best. But,
Me too.
But I'm so grateful that I had you to turn to, because it's almost like it's like an underground thing around here. That
wildly underground.
You know what I mean? And people desperately need this information, because sometimes people are just curious and just need to know and don't have that availability. And it's so sad, because it's just another stigma we put out there. It's just another pathway to addiction, and you know what I mean?
Isolation.
And,
it's the recipe for
it's
addiction.
a disaster.
Yeah.
It's an absolute disaster, and people deserve, everyone. Sober curious is so trendy right now.
Yeah.
Well, what about trans curious? What about bi curious or gay curious? People deserve this education and this information so they can truly be who they're supposed to be. Because, life is way too fucking short to be unhappy your whole entire life and not be who you truly feel like you should be in your life. And
that can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
So, I know I've said this a lot, but this is the number one take home, Every trans person, every non-binary person looks different, has their own style, has their own baggage, right? We all know about baggage. We all have our own way.
Suitcases.
Exactly. So this is a tough thing. I'm very thankful and that the recovery community that we were involved with, understands that language. So I feel like this is the perfect platform for that. If you can understand someone's pathway is their own, their recovery looks different, and that every single person deserves to be happy. You just won what I've been fighting for in this area.
Yeah. And I say it all the time when I try and teach my friends and my family, like, language is so important. So important. I hate when people say junkie. I hate when people say abuse. It's substance use disorder, not abuse, because abuse is always, it's a negative type of wording. And, even people, I'm guilty of this one, like clean and dirty, but like you can't be clean because you were never a dirty human being. Right. Like you have a disease, it's a substance use disorder. That's why it's notated like that. I mean, it's even in medical books like that. And it's some people are like, oh well, whatever, it's not a big deal, or that's such like a small thing, but it's not. Like if it personally affects you or your loved one and someone uses the wrong language, it is so hurtful. Words stick to you harder than hands. I would rather someone beat me up than say some shit that is going to replay in my mind over and over again till the day I die. That's why I'm like I'm constantly correcting people, constantly. And I know everybody has to learn and it takes time, but when it's used to be negative, I'm like an attack animal about. I'm like I fucking hate it. I hate it. I do.
But I'm glad that you like that. I know, you bring up a good point. So the recovery community has done amazing things with words. Mm-hmm. So I'm here today because the recovery community made this wild change in words, right? All I'm asking, so with trans folks, if it's such a complex thing, okay? Non-binary, all of it, it's so complex.
Yes, it really is.
So personal. But language is also incredibly important. So rule number 1, just ask, and ask politely. Mm-hmm. Don't ask in a restaurant. Don't ask,
people really do stuff like that.
In the store, anywhere, but have that respectful conversation. If you don't know, ask. Also, pronouns. Don't ever assume. So my new favorite thing, guys, is, now in the fancy business world, 9 to 5, and very privileged life.
End of our emails.
End of our emails has pronouns. That is taking that stigma away from me saying it when I didn't look like this,
Right.
And I'm very privileged in this, I pass. There's a term called passing I wanted to talk about. So when someone medically transitions and goes on hormones, it changes your exterior, it changes your bones, it changes your muscles.
It's gotta be so painful.
It was. So it's a second puberty. And it is not pleasant. I don't wish that upon anyone, and that's why trans are warriors. I mean, it is a process, and it doesn't happen overnight. There's this idea that this person is trans, and the next day we wake up, as a trans man, I'm, jacked and muscular, the big beard. It doesn't happen that way. It's all about your genes and genetics and all that fun stuff. But you don't necessarily pass. Passing is a terrible term, and not to be used by those who are not involved personally in the trans world, because it's based on those binaries, right? Do you look like a woman or a man? And we kind of fit that in between. So people that identify as non-binary also fall into that. But when you don't pass, you will have more confrontations. So there's a significant period of time when you're medically transitioning and trying to go through recovery at the same time, that you don't look this way and you don't pass. Passing means I can go outside
pass to the public?
Pass to the public as a male. It's a safety net. So, and it's unfortunately it's survival. So I'm lucky enough to have that passing piece occasionally. My mannerisms are a little effeminate, which is fine for me, but sometimes I can do.
Okay, so as like a supporter friend of every community basically, I feel like that's kind of fucked up, like to have a pass or a fail. I feel like that sets you up for either being good enough or not, and
it absolutely
that's
is.
Shitty.
But in a world, I go back to what is trans. It used to be that MO.
That makes me sad.
It used to be that MO of my body. I never felt comfortable in my body. Well, I actually like to word it as.
You shouldn't have to measure up to what someone else feels you pass or not.
So that's why I changed the language. So when we started this, and
that
you asked me, just to kind of explain, I did not hate my body. I did not alter it or hurt it or feel comfortable with it, and it was. Instead of putting that piece on those trans folks like myself, where I've been told years and years and years, you hated your body, you gotta change it, right? Do you feel better? No. My body and my gender expression didn't have any room in society. Society didn't give me room. So I had to create my own space. That's why I'm trans, and I created it, and it's a mixture of both. So this pass is, I want it to be very clear with that passing term.
I don't like that term.
It's a survival. So it is not used openly amongst other trans folks. It is a survival term, meaning when I go to the store, I can pass as male and not draw attention to myself, where someone can say, hey, something's off about this dude, where it can incite violence.
So do you or other people like that, do they live in that past state of mind?
Depending on the area and the openness of their community. So yes and no. In open areas, definitely they have a community, they get together where we live. There is another term called stealth. So a stealth trans person. I attempted to navigate that. It goes back with that passing, meaning I'm privileged enough to pass as a male in society and in a rural area that has no language for me. I'm able to pass and be stealth. So I live that life. Stealth is where you do not disclose your identity to anyone. I'm male, I'm Alex, I'm this.
You just get by under the line, you mean? Like, is that basically like...
Pretty much, and some people choose that, and they're not coerced into it, but for myself, I felt as though I didn't have another choice. But because of my advocacy, I basically, I fucked my own self in that, where I was like on the side talking about trans rights. So I unfortunately don't have that stealth piece anymore. So.
But, okay, so for me, and I only know you as who you are.
Mm-hmm.
To me, you are my friend, you are a man, you are compassionate and caring, and you have this whole other educational piece to you because you have knowledge I don't. So you are a valuable resource to me, but you are just my friend, I care for you, I care for your wife, the life that you live, and you're just my friend. I don't look at you any other way. I don't care if you decided you didn't want to be who you are today. Physically, as long as you still stayed who you were, you're still my friend. I don't...
But that changes. So for myself, and why this is key. So understanding trans folks, just the only thing the world needs to know is I was willing to lose everything to be happy. And I would have lost everything if I wasn't able to complete this process and feel comfortable. Just like basic round 101 mental health, do what makes you happy. It really falls under that, and where we see trans suicide rates are so high because it's a dark, scary world when your own home doesn't feel comfortable and you have to make changes, but you don't have the resources. And that's where those pieces come in with substance use and falling down those wrong pathways. On top of that, I see you getting upset about some of these things.
I do, because I just...
But you come from an area, so you know more than me, right? Especially, preach it, and on this beautiful channel about stigma, and we all know about stigma, and how easy, I was also, junkie, and this, and a drug addict, and this, and you don't necessarily understand why the community can't understand it, because that was our pathway. So just like the trans stuff, it's stigma. It is it's something they don't know. It's something they don't have any materials on, any education on, and it's that stigma. So anytime you hear anything about trans folks, it's negative, or you see that CSI episode. So there was just this study done that all of those CSI, what we grew up
crime
with,
scene,
Channel 12,
yeah.
They would have a trans person character on there, and guess what? They were always murdered. They were always murdered. They were always presented as a sex worker. So
it's very true, actually. And so...
I want you to think about that.
It is, and it's sad that that's the way it's portrayed, and it's almost like it gives it a negative feel to it immediately because it has negative vibes surrounding it and stuff. It just bothers me because, I am... Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to say I don't have my judgmental side or things that I judge, but my judgmental side, I think, is different than most people because I'm the type of person... I'll judge someone that doesn't understand active addiction. What makes you so much better? You know what I mean? So my judgment is kind of reverse And I just don't understand how someone can't understand how somebody, like, why would you want someone to go through life never feeling whole, never feeling like who they are? If it's difficult for you to understand, think about how difficult it is for that person who's going through it to try and understand. Like, I don't know. I just try and put myself in other people's shoes. Maybe because I've been judged so fucking harshly for my own shit that I don't feel it's my job to judge others. I feel like it's my job to stand up for and protect others. And like, you can be a sex worker, you can be active, you can be in recovery, you can, that new California sober, whatever that really is. You can be abstinent like myself. You can drink sometimes on the weekend, but you don't smoke crack anymore. Like, you're sober. Whatever your sober looks like to you, I'm gonna stand up for you and I'm gonna represent for you. If you are bi-curious, if you are trans-curious, or whatever the whole terms are these days, because I always screw them up.
Non-binary, gender non-conforming, stud, tomboy, whatever you are, just like the recovery side, all of those things that we just said.
Yes.
You be who you are and you be happy. And that's really it. I mean, you and I
will stand up for you.
You and I could sit here and talk, this is what I do, right? So I'm just trying to find that, but, I know it's hard for a lot of people to understand, especially when you know someone. So first of all, it's not normal or statistically correct for anybody to admit that they know a trans person. So that's where we're starting.
So you're not supposed to say you know somebody?
Nope. So statistically, there was a survey done in 2015, the first one ever, where people like me were asked these questions across the board. You know how there's statistics and surveys of...
Yeah, but right now they ask you, like, are you male, female? I forget what they even say.
So trans people weren't actually included in anything down to the census. So now imagine statistics in violence, recovery, substance use. We weren't included in that. So there was this beautiful 2015 survey that was just for trans people. It was wonderful and also very upsetting. But,
who did it?
It was through the Trans Survey and Legal Trans Center. So we were finally represented, and 1 out of 50 admitted that they knew someone or had seen someone who identified as trans. So that's huge.
The time that I most likely say I know someone is when someone else needs help.
Right. It's okay. I mean, so it's never okay to disclose someone's identity, ever, without their permission. Ever, ever, ever. It is wildly dangerous. And I think where I'm saying with the survey is, it's okay that, you and I have consenting a friendship with that and what I do for a living, but what I'm saying is to expect this area or any area to understand fully is just like asking, why doesn't someone that, people in addiction are human? I'm also human. I'm more than being trans. I am a writer. I play guitar. I am, a dad to beautiful pups. Mm-hmm. I'm way more than that. So, you have to start on that ground level. And you and I can sit here all day and talk about those deep, educational things, but it's really just respect and understand that even though we come from very different worlds, right, we can all relate. And that's what I love about what we do with our recovery community, because y'all change their language, and it's huge. And I'm out here trying to change that language because we know others like me exist. Others like me may fall into that addiction pit and not know, where is a safe rehab to go to, and thinking about that. And I'm changing old school views. You and I talk about rural, right? So we're gonna talk real rural, which is where we live. Not only am I trying to make space here safely for someone like myself, we're still fighting incredibly old gender roles. Wife, kitchen, bad, terrible, sexist, horrible things. And it's nobody's specific fault. It's just education and kind of keeping up with the times, and people are afraid of change.
It's true. We live in, I don't want to say backwards, because it's not backwards. It's just very slow in progression.
Yeah, it's that traditional setting. But you can see that people are changing, and I love seeing that in everybody. So you know, as much as I would love to be, you know, in Albany with a flag and talking about changing
if you walk down the street with a
trans
flag
rights,
here.
you know, but where my heart lies is changing this rural area because
Right.
we are changing
We are.
stereotypes.
We
and it's
really
great.
are. Like, I think, I like to think this, and correct me if I'm wrong, I like to think that people very publicly saw how bad my addiction was. Very publicly. Things like Smacked and the fact that we were splattered all over the paper because we were selling so much methamphetamines in the area. And now I'm so publicly open about my sobriety and who I am and what I'm doing and where I've been and the things that I've been through. I like to think and pray and hope that I am doing this. I like to think that I have changed some people's stigma towards recovery and that people are capable of recovery. That's really my end goal. I want people to realize that people really do have the power to change and that recovery is possible no matter how bad no matter how bad your bottom was, there's always an up. You know what I mean? Unless you're no longer with us. That's the only time you don't have an up. And I feel like sometimes people get very jaded and they think people who are addicts can never change and never have anything better. And I think they feel the same thing about trans people. They think they're broken
ill,
or right.
Still
And
have this view of that mental illness piece.
right.
That's
And
wild.
I feel like you give people a different perspective on it because you are so open and you're so educated and you're so well received and you're so likable. I think that is a very important piece, and we need soldiers like that, you know what I mean, like to go out into the war. I know it sounds really, you know, dramatic, but in a sense it truly is. You know, we give people, we're in their face about it, but in the proper fashion, and we give them something good to walk away with.
I think also just, you know, you do all of those things.
Thank you.
And you know, it even starts with, I didn't start off, you know, slamming by big books of like surveys and, you know, change the rules, you know, but by me getting back up, right? We live in a small town. A lot of people know my pathways and they weren't pretty either. And I don't like to spend a lot of time there because it feeds into that piece of mental health with who I am now, you know. It just feeds that. Do you understand? So,
No, I get it, yes.
Oh, he's mentally ill. Okay, now we get it. You know, I don't like to spend a lot of time there, but by me showing up, by me continuing to get back up, by me saying, hi, I'm Alex, by me having so many different agency hats that I've worked with that are for nonprofits that, you know, are based in serious religious organizations going, wait a minute, what? Yeah, hi, I'm here.
Yep.
I'm here and I'm queer. And you know what? I showed up every day and I continue to do that, you know, show my face without overbearing and pushing and being, you know, sometimes we want to scream because this life is lonely. It can get scary and you fear for those you love. It's not just trans people. We have families, we have friends, we have wives, we have partners, we have kids, we have all of that. You know, it's a lot to think about with safety, but we just need to continue to show up and be that voice. And, you know, when in doubt, ask a question. And if you don't know, educate yourself. And if you know somebody, find the resources. I spent many years traveling, so I will have to tell you that just last year, I went to all of the local libraries and looked and tried to find any books on transgender folks. There was none. So I donated a bunch of books, tons and tons of books, put them in the library, and I got a phone call from the librarian, and it was bizarre. She called me, she goes, do you have any more books? I was like, what?
Oh, really?
So, I mean, okay, not all trans people steal, but someone stole a bunch of books, and it wasn't out of spite. And when you are a kid going through something so intense of figuring out who you are as a whole being, I'm talking mind, body, soul, you know, searching, you want to find that. And I would rather put those books in those libraries and have that kid walk in and snag it, and he'll return it, just like me, 10 years later. And have that information. Education is power, and we need to start making spaces for people to explore themselves, because all we are, just like a person in recovery, we have this amazing gift. By me going through this process, I know myself through and through, and I know how to be kind to others,
right?
And I know how to speak to others because I've been there, I've done that, and everything's relatable. And if I don't know an experience, you say that, admit it,
Yeah.
Hey, I would rather have people come up and say, I'm so sorry, I'm not very educated on this, can you show me? Rather than be scared of us. We are not scary.
Or nasty.
But it is, important if you know, or if you are a person with this identity that are, you're curious and you're looking, be mindful of safety.
Yeah. So Alex is going to give me a bunch of information, and I will pin it below for this, and I will also put it on our Facebook page, and I will put it on an Instagram story as well, so you guys can just quickly screenshot it, because he has way more information than I do. And again, you guys know, if you need anything, reach out. If it's a question I cannot answer, I will absolutely go to him and have him as well. But
if anyone has any questions, so I came here today and, we talked about a whole bunch of stuff. But I definitely want to provide that space. So if you are queer and a person in recovery, or you're questioning, or you have a friend, that it's a very specific thing. When you have all of these things, as we know very well, trauma's real. Trauma causes a lot of shit. So when you add that piece of being gender nonconforming, or questioning, or non-binary, or trans, it kind of exasperates this whole process of recovery.
Absolutely. How could it not?
If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask Jen. And for my safety and fun stuff, I will be providing links in that. But if anyone needs to get a hold of me, she knows how to.
It'll go through me first. I'll be the bodyguard.
So,
as always.
Because this is a tough topic, but we want to create that safe space.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said, Alex is my friend, and I am greatly honored that he even decided to do this with us. So I will protect him at all costs. If you don't understand, please ask questions and be very mindful about how you approach them, because at the end of the day, as you very well can see, this is a person that is sitting here, and he's a very dear friend of mine. So I just want to put that out there.
And language is power. Help us change, just like in recovery stuff.
Absolutely. I don't always know all the right things. That's why I, constantly go to you. But, I would rather, like you were saying, I would rather ask and get the right information, and maybe screw up to you, who I'm learning, than, God forbid, meet someone in the real world who needs help and I say the wrong thing and it shuts them down.
Absolutely. And, I'm thankful for this, because I have been asked to do things like this, and just like my great idol, right, Laverne Cox, I don't know if we all know her. She's a beautiful actress that identifies under this umbrella. And
I'll have to Google.
We change things. So a lot of these talks and things turn into a, what surgery did you have? What hormones are you on? And that, I stopped that. And because I don't want it to be about my body. My big change here is to realize that we are human beings, and there's no need to hypersexualize us. We are at times coerced into sex work, or we choose it. And then,
which is
that's
fine.
Absolutely fine, but your safety is so important. And to having these outlooks, like we have that stigma, just like with a person in recovery or a person in active use, we have that stigma, and we know how dangerous that can be. And there's no difference when it comes to a trans person.
Right. Actually, I feel like it's more dangerous for them.
It can be.
Yeah. From the few personal experiences that I've had dealing with someone who is in that field and also under that umbrella, I feel like it's more dangerous for them.
It absolutely can be, and navigating those systems are incredibly tough. So I talked to Jen, if anybody wants, trans-friendly rehabs, or making sure that they have that space so that you are not put in a wrong wing, because that could be extremely dangerous, extremely triggering, and we want to make sure, as we know, it's already a shit process navigating any resources when it comes into recovery. So I want to make sure that people that fall underneath this umbrella are represented correctly, so that it sticks, so that you can get what you want out of it. Because the only way I was able to do that was by finding this community, because the systems unfortunately failed me. There just wasn't any space for that, and there's no resources around here. So we're trying to change that. But, instead of us having a conversation today about my experience, my body, and all of that, I'd rather sit here and say, hey, this is a space.
Right.
Anyone have any questions, you can ask me. If you need links to resources, I'd rather
Yes.
have that than that's a more powerful story.
Right.
Than me sitting here and saying, yes, I identify as this, without sharing those intimate details. Here's some resources. Let's change some shit.
Everybody is entitled to ask questions as long as they are asked appropriately. And everybody, if anybody needs any type of information, I will absolutely supply that. And if I feel that it's something that needs to be directly corresponded with Alex, I will speak with him and make sure he is comfortable with that, and then we will make that happen.
Absolutely.
So
I'm going to give my spiel as well. I also, outside of recovery, I also work with, if any trans person is curious or needs resources or information on trans-specific domestic violence or sexual assault or interpersonal violence, childhood violence, any of that, please feel free to reach out to Jen so I can hook you up with some resources.
yes, Alex is actually like pretty much almost credential for credential, where like he's like my male counterpart as far as everything that we're able to do. He actually just has more information, obviously, on things that affect him personally. So if I can't handle it, he can, or vice versa. So
Absolutely.
please reach out. So I really, really thank you for doing this today. I really mean that. And I'm sorry I get upset sometimes.
That's okay. It's okay to be upset.
So,
it's okay to be upset, as you know, but we're changing things, and thank you for having me and having this space.
Don't worry, I'm gonna make you come back.
I was gonna say, then we're gonna come back, and then we're gonna compare puppy sizes, because
Yes.
it's ridiculous that your dog is this big, and I have this 65-pound. I don't even know.
Actually, Alex just brought Frankie a little camo hoodie today, so I will take some pictures and show you guys. It's so cute. I can't even stand it. Jared's like, great, thanks, bro.
Wait for the Christmas outfits.
I can't wait.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for being here today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. And remember, we recover loudly, so those behind us do not suffer in silence. Bye.